Did you know that the United States once produced coins worth 2 cents, 3 cents, and even 20 cents? Today, these denominations seem strange, but during the 1800s, they were created to solve very real problems in American commerce. Some lasted only a few years, while others survived for decades. Welcome back to Coin Quest, where every coin has a story. Today, we're going back to the 19th century to explore three of America's most unusual denominations: the 2 cent piece, the 3 cent piece, and the 20 cent piece. Let's start with the 2 cent piece. The United States introduced the 2 cent piece in 1864 during the Civil War. At the time, the nation was experiencing a serious coin shortage, people were hoarding coins, and the government was struggling to keep enough small denomination coins in circulation. The 2 cent piece was part of an effort to provide more useful small change. But the coin had something that made it especially important in American history. It was the first U.S. coin to carry the motto, "In God We Trust." The motto appeared above the shield on the reverse of the coin. The obverse featured a large Liberty shield surrounded by a wreath. The 2 cent piece was made primarily of bronze and had a face value that was useful during a time when small change was needed. However, as other denominations became more available after the Civil War, the need of the 2 cent piece declined. Production continued until 1873, but the denomination was officially discontinued that year. So the 2 cent piece had a relatively short life, but it still left behind an important legacy. The motto, "In God We Trust," would eventually become a permanent part of the United States coins. Now let's move on to the 3 cent piece. Actually, the United States produced two different types of 3 cent coins, and their stories are quite different. The first was the 3 cent silver, introduced in 1851. Why create a 3 cent coin? At the time, postage was an important part of everyday commerce. A 3 cent coin was especially useful because the standard domestic postage rate had been reduced to 3 cents. The coin was very small and extremely thin. The obverse featured a star, and in the middle, the shield displayed in the middle. And the obverse featured a display of a large Roman numeral 3. The 3 cent silver was produced until 1873, although its use declined significantly after the introduction of the nickel 3 cent piece. And that brings us to the second type. The 3 cent nickel was introduced in 1865, shortly after the Civil War. The government needed small denomination coins, and nickel was becoming increasingly important in coin production. The 3 cent nickel was larger and thicker than the tiny silver version. It featured a Liberty portrait on the obverse and a Roman numeral 3 on the reverse. The 3 cent coin continued until 1889. So between the silver and nickel versions, the United States produced 3 cent coins for nearly 4 decades. But why did they disappear? As the U.S. coinage system developed, other denominations became more useful, and the need for a 3 cent coin gradually declined. And now we come to perhaps the strangest of all three, the 20 cent piece. The 20 cent piece was introduced in 1875. At first, the idea may have seemed reasonable. A 20 cent coin could fill the gap between the 10 cent and the 25 cent denominations. But there was one major problem. It was too similar to the quarter. The 20 cent piece was slightly smaller than a quarter, but its size, weight, and design were similar enough that people could easily confuse the two coins. Imagine reaching into your pocket and pulling out what you thought was a quarter, only to discover that it was actually worth 20 cents. That problem made the coin unpopular. The 20 cent piece featured a seated Liberty design on the obverse and an eagle on the reverse. It was struck primarily at the Philadelphia, Carson City, and San Francisco mints, but its life was extremely short. The denomination was authorized in 1875, and regular production lasted only until 1878, with a limited final issue in 1878. The 20 cent piece is now considered one of the shortest-lived regular U.S. coin denominations. So what can these three unusual coins teach us? The 2 cent piece was created during a national coin shortage and gave America its famous motto, "In God We Trust." The 3 cent piece was created to make small transactions and postage payments easier and eventually appeared in both silver and nickel. And the 20-cent piece was created to fill a gap in American commerce, but failed largely because people confused it with a quarter. Today, all three denominations are fascinating pieces of American numismatic history. They remind us the coins aren't just pieces of metal, they are products of their time. Changes in technology, commerce, war, postage, metal prices, and everyday spending habits can all influence what coins a country produces. And sometimes a coin simply doesn't work. That's exactly what happened with these three denominations. They were created to solve problems, served their purpose for a time, and eventually disappeared. But more than a century later, collectors still search for them, and each one tells us something about the America in which it circulated. Do you have a 2-cent, 3-cent piece, or even a 20-cent piece in your collection? Let me know in the comments which one's your favorite. If you enjoyed the journey through some of America's forgotten denominations, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join CoinQuest for more coin history, coin roll hunts, numismatic news, and interesting coins to look for. Thanks for watching, and remember, every coin has a story, and the next great piece of history could be waiting in your collection.